Okay, so sorry for the weird movement of the camera. Sorry for the mess. I'm cleaning again, getting ready to hit the road. Sorry, I just woke up. My voice is a little weird. But I don't know if you can see this. This is just a little energy drink can, and I just wanted to, because I know in the last video I didn't show any sort of use of this. Yeah, I've already got it pre-charged. Now that I know it works, and I've tested it out several times, and I've learned exactly how you have to put the pellet in there. So you can't just drop the pellet in there every time and it fire every time. It's just because this isn't the right kind of barrel. You have to use a ramrod and get the pellet all the way seated into the rifling. It gets wedged in there because of where the casing has to sit. Sometimes it doesn't. So I've since tested it like 20 times, and I've learned that if you do push it all the way past where the casing sits into the rifling, it will fire reliably every time, which is great. So I think I have it at around 100 psi right now again. So I'll fire it into that can and watch it move. So yeah, it's a fully functioning air rifle. You know, you just hold it like this and you shoot things. Let's go ahead and just discharge all the air. It's still got quite a bit of air in it according to this little pop-out valve, which only starts to pop out around 80 something, closer to 100 psi. So it's still like pretty popped out, so I didn't lose much air there. There. Fully discharged it because there's no point. It only really shoots good above 100 psi. So if it starts to get less than that, it's gonna need discharge. I took the tape off and I forgot, well, right here wouldn't have mattered anyways because it's metal, but I forgot to get the proper glue when I bought this stuff. So what I did is, my trick with hot glue is if you take a lighter to it and get it where it's on fire and dripping, that stuff will bond to just about anything. And that's what I did. I took the pipe out and I dripped hot glue all around it where it was on fire. And then I put it on there and I gave it a slight twist to make sure it covered everything. Same thing on all the connections except this one where it has to come apart. And I did the same thing here, metal on plastic. And I also filled in the little gaps that were in the barrel, like for all the notches for things, with solder, and then filed that even with the barrel. So there is still a slight air leak around this metal on plastic, even with the hot glue, like the way, but that's just the way it is. I'm going to eventually change that once I get better glue, like actual good, like super glue or something. Because that's an air leak, and you know, less pressure. It barely leaks now that I've did the hot glue thing. So, like I said, the pellet can get jammed up in there, and I don't know if you can see on my face that scar. The line was already there, but this little dot, it happened to line up right on my scar. So this part here. So not the hose coming off the hose, those have been on there good, but the little plastic part came out of this threaded part. The pellet got jammed up and everything was all sealed up nice and tight, and I was holding it like this, but a little further away, so I was looking down the barrel trying to aim, and this popped out, came back, smacked me in the face. It's okay. Made a little mark. It's alright though. So yeah, I want to do a little better than hot glue eventually, of course, but I think my method of lighting hot glue on fire until it's like super melted makes it like melt into things and bond with things better. Whenever I want to use hot glue as a super glue, I always do that. And I've never had a problem. I've always had to, like, usually if I do that, I can't get something back apart and get the hot glue off successfully. You're pretty much, you ruined it. Like, if you do that, and you're trying to get hot glue off of it, good luck with that. when you melt it like that, and it's just turned brown. But yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. My next idea is the reason I put this one in the back and everything and made this part on the top, and that's nice and centered and everything, so that I might be able to put a front piece on there and use that part as a sight. I just need a front piece to actually make the sight setup work, because just having a back one doesn't really work for a sight, because then you line it up with the tip of the front of the barrel and you're pointed down at an angle. That's weird. But if I measure this out, this little bolt that goes through the center here, the height of it from the barrel, and then it's got an attachment point here, which I can just use to make something not slide. So I'll cut a piece of metal that wraps around it and then has a little piece that sticks right up, about as tall as that little bolt in the center, so that you can line them up. And then should be a good sight, just a normal sight post for, you know, something a little longer distance. Up close you don't really need a sight like for that, you just kind of point it and pull the trigger. But further away you might need a sight. So although this is a fully rifle barrel, so a little easier to aim with than some of my other guns, like this one. This is my other homemade gun. This one shoots a real bullet and it stays loaded 24/7. Now when I start going across states, I'll probably not, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, most people, they think, oh shit, that's a fucking pirate gun, you know? It's neat looking. It just shoots a 22, but it's well overbuilt for a freaking 22. Like, you know, I made another video on this gun by itself. It's an actual rifled little barrel. This is a pellet rifle barrel. You look how thick that barrel is, and then the actual 22 rifle gun barrel that I just used is just as thick. Like, pellet rifle barrels, some of them are pretty much a gun barrel, because pellet rifles can be just as powerful or almost as powerful as a real 22. Like the one that I've had here, like 5-6 years ago, I paid almost $200 for that pellet rifle, and it was so powerful. It sounded like a dang 22 going off when you fired it. It would go through just about anything that I shot. I got mad one day at a phone that was like really glitching out, and it was pretty much on its last limb, and it kept freezing up. It kept opening apps randomly. It kept doing all kinds of weird stuff that kept making me so angry. I had anger issues back then. I took that phone. Now, mind you, this was a breakdown to cock it and reload it 22 pellet rifle. I took that phone out on my front porch, and I rented an apartment, and I put it down, and I loaded and cocked that 22 pellet rifle and shot my phone 3 times. I was that angry that I took the time, and this, you know, was a really powerful one, so it was really hard for someone small like me to reload it. 3 times I shot that dang phone straight through it into the wood of the porch. And my neighbor comes out and like, what's going on? I was like, nothing, my phone broke. And she heard it and went back in. It's funny, but yeah, they're pretty powerful. I wound up being my usual stupid self, getting curious about how a pellet rifle works, and so I tore it to pieces. I used to do that a lot as a kid too. When I want to know how something works, I tear it to pieces, hoping I can put it back together. But typically, if I don't know how it worked to begin with, I can't put it back together until I get a further understanding of it. But I can understand some of it on my first time taking it apart. And that's what happened. I learned a little bit more about the air and how things work in a pellet rifle by tearing it apart. But I, kind of broke a few things, whatever. But that's okay. That wound up to me building my first pistol, which I think I will, at the end of this video, I will link a photo of my first pistol that I ever built, which had a full trigger system. So the lower receiver was made out of the handle of a crossbow, pistol crossbow. So it was a solid piece of heavy-duty plastic. So I could bore out notches and drill holes and stuff, and it was solid, good plastic. I don't think it was Delrin, but it was some sort of good plastic. And I don't know what it was. I'm not really into all the different types of plastics. I don't know the names and everything. But, so anyway, so I drilled holes, bored notches and everything, so I could actually have a full trigger with springs and all that. And I had the sear, and I had the thumb piece. The thumb piece was directly welded to the sear, which was directly welded to the little hook that comes over on top of the trigger. So that when you pull the trigger, the hook raises up. Okay, so think about it this one moment. Please hold. What do I have to demonstrate? I have a flashlight handle. Okay, think about it this way. The sear sticks up right here, just behind the center of the whole setup. The sear is the part that comes up and holds the bolt back. Alright? And the bolt's, under spring pressure when you got it held back, so it's pushed right up against that sear, and there's a flat edge there. On the other side of that sear, there's a curved edge or a slanted edge to allow the bolt to come back, pushing the sear down, or back just backwards and down, and then locking it behind the sear. Anyways, so what was I saying? Oh, anyways, so it's just behind the pivot point. There is a pivot point right center of all of that, and the sear is just behind that. Not too far back, because I don't need it to move like a million miles. I only need the sear to move just the tiniest bit, just to come unlocked from the bolt. So anyways, there's a little hook, like a rounded edge hook. Not much of a hook, but kind of about like that on my finger. On the end of this, and that's the trigger has a little piece that connects in with that and locks in. So when you pull the trigger, it's the top of the trigger is going forward of the gun, and so that's sliding that up, which drops the sear down, allows the bolt to go forward. And so on the back of the sear, directly welded, all that, this and the sear was all one piece. Think of it like an upside down T. That was all one piece. And then there was a thumb piece, which was shaped really nicely. It took me forever to make that whole piece. It looked really nice. It was really fancy looking. And so the thumb piece was directly connected to that too. So you could, hold it and just fire it with the thumb, or you could fire it with the trigger. Or wait, pull it this way. Yeah, and so that was really neat. And that was the whole lower receiver. It's just that the trigger does all that. And then there was the upper receiver, which was just a heavy. I overbuilt it way too much at the time because I didn't know much about guns, and I was just, like everyone who doesn't know much about guns, they're afraid it's going to blow up. And so I way overbuilt the upper receiver for the barrel and everything. Way too thick of metal. It was heavy. Heavier than this. And it was half the size. Way heavier than this. And it had about that much of a barrel, 6 or so inch barrel, maybe slightly longer. And it was, you had to pull a pin to reload it, pull the barrel out. Still a single shot. And it just had a spring in the back there with an actual bolt ground down at the tip to make the actual firing pin. And it had a notch cut out for the sear. Wasn't the best way to do it because the bolt could rotate in there. And that I didn't have a notch all the way around it because that would have made it too thin and risky. I was afraid it would break, although it probably wouldn't have. I was afraid it was, so you had to twist it and make sure it was lined up with the sear when you pull it back, like the notch in it. And then you pull it. There's like a little piece on the back of it. You put your knuckles around. It came off of a bicycle or something. It was like to hold the handlebars, not the actual two little bolts or the set that holds the handlebar, not like the main one that goes down through the bearings to hold the handlebars down. And you go like that, and it just locks in place so that part stays back. So it's not like a real gun with a slide. You do that and then that part goes back forward. No, the whole part you pull stays back. So kind of looks goofy when you're in the ready to fire position, but let's see what else. Yeah, that was pretty much it, but I overbuilt it. I took it to a pawn shop, not to get, there's laws. You can sell a homemade gun, but you have to register it and stuff, and I don't fool with trying to make and sell homemade guns. I'm not trying to make them and sell them every now and then to avoid getting my gun license. I'm not trying to do anything with getting rid of them because there's just too many annoying laws and stuff around all that. It's legal to build them and operate, like use them and all that stuff, and whatever. There's still some laws around just self-building and having fun with them, but like way less than trying to get rid of them. You can give them away too, but you still have to register them. I don't know that they have to be inspected or anything because a gun's dangerous anyway, so why would it need to be inspected? Maybe. But either way, I don't fool with all that. I mean, I know I can, but I don't want to. It's too much of a headache. But either way, I took it into the pawn shop because it was a local pawn shop I had been to for years. And I knew the gunsmith guy there, the gun dealer. I don't know if he was a gunsmith, but he was a gun dealer anyways. And so he knew his stuff. So I took it into him and was talking to him about it and showing him. And he thought it was really cool and everything. And then once I showed him how the sear worked and everything, how the whole trigger system worked, he said, yeah, that's since the whole upper receiver just comes right off of the lower receiver, just like a regular gun. He said technically the lower receiver was against the law because the sear and the thumb part was all one piece. So if I had built a new upper receiver with a feed ramp and an ejection port, I had a automatic trigger system. Whatever. I don't know about all that, but that's what he said. And even though the upper receiver was just a single shot, you have to pull the barrel to reload it, the lower part, the sear was directly connected to the thumb piece, which meant you could just hold it down. So yeah, if you had a feed ramp and an ejection port, you just hold it down until it's out of rounds. But I didn't, but I did disassemble that gun on that statement that he gave me, basically. I kept a few parts for a few years, but eventually I lost them. The trigger parts were the parts I really wanted to keep because I thought I might use them again one day. I somehow lost them over the years. It's been like 5, 6 years ago. I don't know. It's been a long time. Long time. But yeah, so yeah, I guess I just explained to you how to build an automatic trigger system if you know how to build an upper receiver with a feed ramp and an ejection port. Or if you know how to modify an existing gun, just make sure the sear is able to be held down until they're out of rounds. Don't do that though. That is illegal pretty much anywhere you go, not just America, I think. Unless you're in the military and you're building guns for the military. But yeah. And also you can risk, if a gun wasn't already made to go into full auto, it probably ain't going to handle full auto very well. Maybe for a few seconds. I've seen a lot of videos of people doing that shit, modifying their pistols or whatever for full auto. And they jam up, or it's just too risky. What if it jams up and like it fires at the same time? No, don't do it. I only fool with what I know, what's safe for me. It might not be safe for somebody else because they don't understand it, and so they might mess up and do something dangerously wrong. So I am not fooling with what it could be possibly dangerous for me. My kitty cat came over here. For a while, she was really afraid of this during the testing period before it was all a gun. when it was just me blowing air out of the tip of this and stuff. She is scared of it. She would run and hide. Ooh. She's still kind of, like, now that I'm holding it, she kind of slowly backed away and went under the bed, but, like, she's not as afraid of it now. It's just a gun now. I don't really blow air out of it. I'm gonna wait till I make the other part for this, though, to fire an actual bullet. Not much point. It's a fully functioning, pretty powerful air rifle right now, so. And I've decided I'm probably gonna redo the connection here and make it easier to connect and lock in place, so that I can quickly, because this is kind of a bitch to pull out. That's good. It makes a good seal, but, like, dang, it's hard to pull out. Like, really hard. I wasn't faking that. That was, like, really hard. Yeah, I got the feed ramp taken off of the little tiny feed ramp on the back of the barrel that was there. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, I got it all taken off. And so those two side notches on the left or right of the barrel, those are still kind of hollow, but, I mean, they're filled with a little bit of the hot glue that was melted down pretty good, like burning and dripping around everything, and then this collar put on there. So, but there was another little notch that goes long ways with the barrel on the top of the barrel, which is right now the bottom of it, which you're looking at. And so I filled that long notch with solder and then ground it down. It's hard to get the solder to, it's a big heat sink here, so this cools the solder down pretty quickly, almost as soon as it touches it. So I had to just drip enough solder and just go ahead and let it cool down to do the job. And then once I got enough solder just kind of on the notch somewhere, I went ahead and took the soldering iron and just kind of held it there until it was melting down. And it wasn't perfect, but I got it all in there, and then I took a file and shaped it to where I could still get the collar on there. Still leaked a little bit of air after that because, the solder didn't really sit the way I wanted it to. But it filled most of the hole, and then the hot glue did most of the rest. There's like one spot now where it's leaking a little bitty bit of air around it. So, way better than it was with the tape on it. The tape worked for a couple of shots, but eventually the 100 PSI blew out the tape. Like, it started leaking a lot of air. Alright. Yeah. So, let's see. Maybe one of these days I'll start fooling with gas-powered air guns. Like, you know how people do with the potato guns and the hairspray? So I fool with plenty of these old lighters and tearing them apart and recycling them. Making like little fake toy tasers. You hand somebody something and they click it and it shocks them a little bit out of the clickers out of these little lighters. I've done that a few times. So I might do something like that. Not the toy part, but like use one of those as like an ignition system and stuff. Probably not even tear a lighter apart. Probably literally just like modify it to where you don't need to hold the one part down. You can just pull it and click it, and that be your main trigger. And it did have part of this just going up, bent up or something, the wires and the connector in one. But yeah, do the whole potato cannon thing, except for I don't want to make a large barrel to fire from. I'm sure that what do you call that? The main chamber needs to be relatively large to build up pressure and all that. But I still want to use small. I don't know if I would use this or maybe this lined in copper pipe or some sort of smaller round pipe so I could shoot small projectiles. I don't want it to be something that's going to shoot a big projectile. It takes more force. I want all that huge force to go into something small so it can go further and stronger and be more deadly. Like, that's another reason I like this, is because it can be deadly if I need it to be with the bullet in it. Because I have been thinking about getting back into, I haven't hunted since I was a little child, for rabbits and squirrels. It wasn't very successful, but that's because I only done it like 2 or 3 times. My stepdad taught me how to skin a squirrel, and I still remember and retain that knowledge, even though I would never fully skin one by myself. I'm very confident that I can do it, because I sat there, and that's a everlasting memory, but is him sitting there and teaching me how to skin a squirrel. We went through 2 or 3 squirrels. He dropped one in, or I'm not gonna say he, it probably was me. We dropped one in the dirt, and his statement on that was, you might as well throw it to the dog because it's too hard to clean after you start taking the skin off, where they're sticky and stuff, kind of sticky. So that's what he did, was threw it over the fence to the dog. But so yeah, and I was like, I don't know, I was real young, and that's a memory that's stuck with me for years, how to skin a squirrel. That's knowledge I haven't got to use yet, but it's still there in my head. But so yeah, squirrel, rabbit, if you learn how to skin something, you know how to skin something, whether it's small or big. It's the gutting part that's a little different. Skinning's the same. Learning how to identify what guts is what is a little different, but for a squirrel, I'm alright. He taught me all that. So yeah, I want to use this for that. And also, like I said, if I build that air cannon, not cannon, but another air rifle, but it uses the gas to ignite, I kind of want to do a barrel on it that will allow me to shoot some sort of bolt or dart. Not like a bolt like you tighten, like for a crossbow, but in a barrel. So I know I've seen people do that with these and shoot bolts out of them for a crossbow and have a PVC barrel and all that. So I might do something like that, but have a gas, so it'd be a more easily portable, reloadable, rechargeable setup for hunting. That way I can use it for like bigger game or something. Not real big, like deers or anything, just like, well, what's bigger than a squirrel that's between a deer that I would actually want to eat? I didn't think that through, did I? I don't know. Anyways, I just want something that has a little bit more force behind it with a bigger projectile. Doubt that it would kill a deer, because you can't get close enough to a deer, and I don't think, if I built it out of PVC, I don't think I'd be able to get enough force out of it to go long distance to kill a deer. I'd have to build it out of metal, and then to be able to get enough pressure in there. And even then, I don't think using an aerosol can is going to do it, and igniting it. I don't know. I don't exactly do like a whole lot of research videos when I go to build things. I just go over the designs in my head, and how I think it should work is how I build it. And I might redesign it 100 times before I actually finish it or actually build it in my head, trying to come up with the best version, like how I did with that. I had multiple different ideas for how that should be built in my head. Still having ideas for how I might want to modify it and change it. But like, I do want to put a hand pump on it if I can. But my thought is, if the hand pump's on it and plumbed in, that pump is also taking the same amount of pressure that's in the tank, right? So can a bicycle pump hold up to 100 psi? I haven't looked it up. Don't plan on looking it up. I just plan on getting a cheap bicycle pump and finding out one day. I'm not in a hurry to do that modification to it, because I have the ability to fire it easily and recharge it. Here I have an air compressor, and it runs off of my it can run off my van, it can run off of my drill battery, and since I've made a drill battery adapter, I can just attach it all to it and put that in like a little satchel or a backpack and carry it all with me and keep it plumbed up while I'm using it. Portable, so not a big deal right now, just noisy. Well, I've rambled pretty long, and oh yeah, no, that's a separate video. You'll get that in another video. I've rambled long enough. I'm not going to cut this down, so it's going to be like a 30-minute long video. Enjoy. Just gun talk, I guess. That's all. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Uh-oh. There we go.